The second portion of Lesson 9 focuses on rules, rewards, and consequences. Some takeaway messages include: family rules should be clear, specific, age-appropriate, and reflect the values and vision parents have for their children. Family rules and clear directions are very important in providing structure for children and building discipline. However, rules and directions need to be followed up with natural and logical consequences and rewards to encourage compliance. Consequences and rewards should be related to the behavior, should be reasonable, based on the behavior and the age of the child, and should be respectful of the child's dignity. A sample learning goal could include: I would like to come up with family rules and appropriate consequences for compliance and non-compliance for my child. You can take a second and write down a learning goal for this part of the lesson. We're going to begin this part of the lesson by reviewing where we've been so far on our journey to our children's adulthood. We started by identifying the vision we have for our children. So I encourage you to take a second and think back to our first week where we talked about destination adulthood and what you had envisioned for your children as they became adults. Next, we looked at styles of parenting and saw that the backbone style of parenting can be effective in helping us achieve the vision we have for our children. In the last part of our lesson, we reviewed what backbone looks like, and that's choice within structure, or mixing nurture and structure and having a balance of that. Recently, we added giving directions to the list. We're now on our journey. We have rules and directions to provide structure, but what happens if the traveler follows the rules? Or what happens if they break the rules? If the traveler follows the rules, they'll stay safe, they'll keep others safe, he'll keep his car from damage, he won't get a ticket, he has a good driving record, his insurance rates stay low. There's all sorts of things that we could consider. But what happens if the traveler ignores the speed limit, breaks the barriers, runs over the cones? This traveler probably gets pulled over, might get a ticket, and potentially might get arrested if it's bad enough. They may need to pay a fine, go to driving school, etc. We're going to look at natural and logical consequences. If you look on the left side, we have a box listed actions. One of the actions says, you follow the rules on the road. Your consequence is that you stay safe and that you keep others safe, and that you do not get a ticket. The natural consequence is that you're staying safe and others are staying safe. The logical consequence would be that you don't get a ticket, or the logical reward would be that you don't get a ticket. If you don't follow the rules on the road, the natural consequence would be that you're probably going to get a ticket or be involved in a car crash. The natural consequence of not following rules is being dangerous or becoming a reckless driver and causing an accident. The logical consequence of not following the rules on the road would be that you get a ticket. Without both these types of consequences, people would do exactly as they want. Natural and logical consequences help motivate people to make choices and do the right things. It's often pretty common that when kids are learning how to follow rules or learning how to comply with rules, a mixture of natural and logical rewards and consequences is usually the most likely thing that's going to encourage them or help them to be the most compliant. And so sometimes that looks like a reward for a positive behavior, such as following the rules on the road. You're not going to get a ticket. That's a logical one. A logical consequence of not following the rules is that you do get a ticket. That is something that happens to you or that a police officer enforces. Regardless of whether or not someone is enforcing rules, you're still going to potentially get in a car crash if you don't follow the rules, but you are going to stay safe regardless of whether or not someone is enforcing that. So a mixture of these natural and logical consequences is usually the best way that shapes how we and our children make our choices in regards to our behavior. This leads us to our next topic, which is family rules. We're going to discuss the value and use of family rules as a form of structure and discipline. So what is the benefit of having rules? Well, everyone knows what to expect. They know the standards of behavior, and they won't be surprised when they receive a consequence. It helps life to run more smoothly, and children are being socialized to live cooperatively and respectfully with others. Rules should be clearly spelled out in what the expectations are so that both children and parents know when a rule has been broken. When making rules, we need to be careful to create rules that are clear and specific and tell children what to do rather than what not to do. Let's begin by thinking of some general categories for which we might want to have some family rules around. A category that I can think of includes treating others with respect. Some others include safety, family activities, ethics, household responsibility, accountability, and parental preference. These are not rules, so telling your children to show respect isn't a rule, it's a category of a rule. It's not specific enough to be a rule. Our goal is to develop rules that are clear and specific about behaviors that are observable. So for example, if I wanted to choose safety because that's a category of rule that I find important, I might make a specific rule that says, everyone has a 10 p.m. curfew. If you're going to be late, you need to call home and let us know. This is a rule. It's much more specific and it's measurable to see whether or not children have complied with it. Now we're going to give it a try. So if you go to handout 9.2.2, it is entitled Family Rules. And this will be in your purple workbook. At the very top, you can see that it says vision. This is the time where you're going to reflect and go back to week 1 and think about what is the vision that you have for your children. Maybe it's even shifted or changed since then. For example, you might write, to grow up to be independent, responsible, safe, and empathetic members of society. You write whatever the vision is for your children in this section. You can take a second to fill out that portion of the worksheet. Next, we're going to talk about values. What are some values that are very important to you that you'd like to teach your children? This might overlap a little bit with your vision, and that's okay. I wrote down safety, treating others with respect, family activities, responsibility, and kindness. Next comes the household rules. Now we're going to write down household rules that you can implement when you are able to. What rules will help teach your children the values that you would like to implement and help your children attain the vision you have for them? You're going to make sure you follow this checklist. Are they clear? Are they specific and talk about observable behaviors? Do they tell children what they can do rather than what they can't do? And is it a reasonable expectation for your child's age? I've listed a couple here. So if one category of rule that I had was safety, this is the same one as I mentioned earlier, everyone has a 10 p.m. curfew. If you're going to be late, you need to call and let us know. There's no way around this rule. Children know exactly what's expected of them. Number 2, if I really value respect and kindness, I might have a rule that says, you must always knock before entering your siblings' or parents' rooms. Again, it's very specific, and children know exactly what's expected of them. And this is a rule that is focused around creating respect and kindness and modeling that to your kids. Number 3, we have one that focuses on parental preference. There might just be some things that are really important to you or things that maybe really frustrate you that you think having a rule around that will make your household run a lot smoothly. So if you don't like to listen to loud music, or maybe it gives you a headache when the music is playing too loud or the radio is playing too loud, maybe a rule in your house or in your car is that when using the stereo, you must keep the volume knob to 3 or less. These types of rules are okay too. As long as children know what to expect, we're setting them up for success. You may now pause the video and write down 4 rules that you would like to implement for your children, and what category or value does that rule surround? One important category of rules has to do with children's media use. You can turn in your yellow workbook to page 9.2.1. You can then pause the video and take a minute to read and highlight the text. I'd encourage you to underline or make a note of anything that stands out to you. You may consider shaping another rule around your child's media use. Go ahead, pause the video, and read through this handout. Our roadway journey is one slice of real life out there. The world operates, for the most part, on a system of natural and logical consequences, like we mentioned earlier. Generally speaking, if you put in the hard work and effort, there are rewards. For example, if you exercise and eat right, you have a better chance of staying fit and healthy. If you work hard and study, you're more likely to get a better grade. On the other hand, if you don't study, you may not pass the test. Or if you show up late for work repeatedly, you may lose your job. Of course, there are things that happen in life that are simply unfair. Nice people get cancer, you do your best and still don't get the promotion. But a great majority of life, enough of it to plan on, works by natural and logical consequences. If that is how the world works, doesn't it make sense to train our children using natural and logical consequences? It not only helps shape their behavior toward the vision we've set out for them, but it prepares them for the real world. Our goal is to learn to use natural and logical consequences to limit and reward our children's behavior, to help them achieve the vision we have for them as capable and loving adults. We're going to look at some age-appropriate natural and logical consequences and rewards.
Hello, and welcome to the Very Important Parents video series, where you can access information on parenting, relationships, and life skill development for families with young children.
All children will misbehave, and sometimes they do things that we don't like. It's our job to help teach them how to behave. And though there are many ways to do that, today we're going to focus on natural and logical consequences. Let's start with a natural consequence. A natural consequence is something that happens, well, naturally. For example, if your baby throws their pacifier down on the ground, it gets dirty. If your child refuses to wear a jacket on a cold day, well, they get cold. As a parent, we can't really plan a natural consequence. So for example, we can't teach the cat to scratch our children if they're being unkind. But what we can do is warn our children and teach them what to do. Be gentle when you pet the cat so they don't scratch you. So natural consequences help our children learn how to behave naturally. Of course, we don't want our children to fall and scratch their knee. Our job is to help keep our children safe. So sometimes we use natural and logical consequences to help teach our children. Where a natural consequence happens on its own, a logical consequence happens when we help a child understand the consequence of an undesired behavior. So an example of a logical consequence might be a parent saying, if you don't clean your room, then you can't have a friend over. And a logical consequence doesn't always have to be used for bad behavior. It can also be used when a child is having good behaviors. It's always great to focus on the positive when we can. Let's take a look at a logical consequence in action.
Mom, can I have friends over?
I don't know, Sophie, how's your room look?
Well,
let's see. Oh, Sophia, what's the rule about having friends over?
clean room. Hey Mom, can I have my friends over?
Well, I don't know, Sophie, how does your room look?
It looks awesome.
Wow, you must have worked really hard. You can have your friends over.
Thanks, Mom.
So what did you notice about that logical consequence? At first, the child's room was a mess, so she couldn't have her friends over. But she was offered a second chance to try again. And so once her room was clean, then she got what she wanted. Whatever we do, we need to make sure that we keep it age appropriate. What I do for my teenagers might look pretty different than what you would do for a younger child. Timeout has been used for many years as a way to help children learn, but
in that video, it discussed the differences between natural and logical consequences and how they can go hand in hand to help your child learn how to comply with requests. Teaching children to comply is one of our parent jobs. We need to approach this job with realistic expectations. Let's go ahead and turn to worksheet 9.2.3 in your yellow workbook titled Going Along with Adult Requests.